Ngā Māni. This presentation is being recorded on unceded Kaurna land, and we pay respects to the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of this land. We acknowledge the deep and abiding connection to country held by Kaurna people and by First Nations people around the world.
Migration is a hot button issue, but for the past 12 to 18 months, it has essentially stopped, at least here in Australia. Closed borders means even Australian citizens and permanent residents have struggled to come home to the country. And to leave means the real risk of not being able to come back. The closure of national borders means no quick trips back to celebrate special occasions or to visit with aging relatives. There are millions around the planet in this position, and we feel a sense of distant community of longing. But that does not mean we are necessarily longing for home. For Kim and I, we have made our home here in Australia, at least for now. This presentation explores the ways we engaged in persona production over the 2020 year through our own online personas.
This project is a collaborative autoethnography and the first step in a larger project looking at migrant personas in Australia. The process we followed in our research, approved by the Human Research Ethics Committee, is as follows. Firstly, we identified the sites that we wish to study, settling on 2 platforms each, Twitter for both of us, and I also looked at Instagram and Saira looked at Facebook. These spaces are the ones that we use in similar ways, with Twitter tending towards professional and political, and Instagram and Facebook being more personal in focus. Twitter profiles are public, the others are private. We captured data using screenshots and coded it into themes. After spending some time with the data, we wrote reflective statements about the year and our sharing of it on social media. We reflected on what we posted, why we posted it, and importantly for both of us, what we didn't share. Then we shared the data and our reflective statements with each other, considering how the second set of data altered our relationship to our own experience. From this process of coding, reflection, and comparison, we began the process of identifying elements of our migrant personas that can be extrapolated from these rich data. For the purposes of this presentation, we'll be discussing 3 key categories: amplification of self, balancing banalities and events, and performing a nothing to see here self. Through discussion of these strategies, drawing on our reflection from the data, we hope to demonstrate the value of autoethnography and deep description for analysing personas generally and migrant personas more specifically.
Online, our text-based updates, photos, videos, articles that we share from others, and even locations that we have checked into function as symbols through which we present ourselves. According to Liu, Raymond, and Choye, political expression on social media also functions as self-presentation and can contribute to one's public image. Goffman argued that self-presentation is effective only when it is consistent with audience expectations. This is why, according to Hogan, individuals need to make sure that all of their public interactions on social media meet the expectations of increasingly diverse audience in order to construct positive public impressions. But managing these expectations in the present multi-layered computer-mediated communication environment can be challenging, and individuals may need to balance 2 conflicting needs when engaging in political self-disclosure: expressing true opinions on politics and controversial topics, and maintaining a positive public impression on social media. If they publicly express their true opinion, which differs from or is viewed inappropriately by their social media contacts, they may be perceived negatively, as both Duguay and Fox and Barbour have noted. Further, research shows that negative public impressions can lead to negative social and instrumental outcomes. It is this balancing act that often leads one to self-edit political opinions on social media, as is apparent in both our reflections. For example, Kim writes,
"Although I share my frustrations with the federal government, and there are many to share, I do this by retweeting others rather than voicing my concerns myself. It's somehow not my place to criticise, as after all, I'm not Australian and this is not my government. Instead, I raise up the voices of others, of Indigenous writers, thinkers and leaders, of migrants who are citizens here, of advocates and activists.
While I do post my opinion on politics of Australia and Pakistan on Twitter, there is a tendency to be somewhat circumspect. The general feeling is that if I write too openly about Pakistan, anti-military establishment, religious extremism, etc., I might attract unwanted attention from the state. Similarly, if I write too openly about Australia, immigration detention centers, security regime, etc., it might cause problems with my immigration status.
The second and third themes involved projecting optimism, positivity, strength and hope through banalities and humour in the face of difficulty or distress. Rather than complain about or wallow in our difficulties, both of us found a way to put a positive spin on our worries in terms of balancing banalities and events, and nothing to see here. These themes support Beula's 2017 study on strategies for seeking emotional support on Facebook, where the overall tone of their research participants' posts was upbeat, conveying hope, strength, and optimism about an otherwise difficult and distressing situation. By projecting positivity, these individuals avoided appearing emotionally needy. Remarking on the impact of COVID restrictions, Saira said,
"Everything came to a standstill in March with the lockdown and the new reality of working from home. It was a difficult time. However, my posts throughout this period remained matter of fact or upbeat. It was a conscious decision to stay positive online because why add to the misery? I did share some disappointments, such as the cancellation of my PhD graduation and not being able to travel to Queensland to see my friends. But generally, the posts on both platforms mostly featured COVID-related news, politics, professional work-related posts, or miscellaneous posts such as toilet paper memes and jokes."
She goes on to say,
"The disruption to our lives in Australia was not as severe as it has been elsewhere, and so it just did not seem right to moan about my real or perceived problems."
Echoing similar sentiments, I wrote, South Australia was extraordinarily lucky, and other than the lack of travellers, visitors and escape, things are much the same, simply with added hand hygiene. As a result, mask wearing is not normal here, although we'll do it if we have to. There are no photos of me wearing a mask on my feet, although I have owned and worn them as directed. How does this look to outsiders? My photos deliberately don't show the crowds or the lack of masks. And then, I know I do try to post the banal. There is so little extraordinary after all, that if I waited for astonishing images, I would hardly post at all.
Our silence on the reality of some parts of our lives as migrants is noted by both of us.
The absence of images of social events is testament to the fact that there simply aren't any. I know at one point I had a night out with friends, but I don't post the pics. It doesn't seem fair when there's so many people elsewhere unable to go to a bar and drink with friends.
Then Kim realizes
There's no photos of Christmas at all.
I reflect again on the emotional tone of my use of different platforms. The absence of all these emotions on Twitter is understandable. It is a professional platform after all. But absence on Facebook raises the question of why I deny myself the support of my friends and my family by not sharing on my less formal, more private platform. One of the reasons for not saying anything is obvious. I did not want my family and friends in Pakistan or even in Australia to worry about me.
These strategies enable us to engage in online persona performances that balance connections to our country of origin, Pakistan and New Zealand, our geographically dispersed networks of family, friends, colleagues and acquaintances, and to an extent, invisibilize our migration. We are, in Saira's words, acting on a
determination to get this right, prove myself, and most importantly, justify why I deserve to stay.
In her reflection, Saira continues,
"The academic in me cringes at this, but my other self, the Pakistani woman who just wants to live her life on her own terms, something she cannot do in her own home country, can empathize with this need to defend her right to be in Australia, however irrational that may be."
While my capacity to live on my own terms wasn't constrained in New Zealand, I moved to Australia in 2009 for fun, for higher income, for different opportunities. This feeling of proving myself really resonates. We are, both of us, still migrants. It is a temporary identity, one presumed to end at some point when you become integrated and acculturated and settled. But for all that, it has remarkable persistence, particularly in a city renowned for its intergenerational cliques. We joke that Adelaide folks solidify their social circles in primary school, but it's also indisputable that our social circles are almost entirely composed of others who've moved to the city as adults.
Stepping back from the minutiae of our own experiences, what has this project offered in terms of the ways that we can understand persona studies? If engaging with online persona performances, studying what is posted will not get you far. This is not to say that this is not a viable, useful research, but rather that it must be acknowledged that to be a partial representation of the person producing it. If online personas are, in Kim's definition, strategic performances of identity through digitally networked media, then it behoves us to remember that these strategic performances leave stuff out. The reflections that make up a portion of the data collected here reminds us of just how partial these personas are and just how necessary it is that we talk to those producers directly if we are to make claims as to the ways that personas connect to their producers. For us, we now move to the next stage of our research in speaking with other migrants about their uses of social media for persona performances, with the richness of this reflexive experience embedded in our research design.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.